Scene. We're getting underway with the last round of games from this group. And I'm really excited because towards the end of today's show, once we've gone through all of these games, Tim, we get a live draw of what's going to happen in the playoffs. Get to see who's playing who. So got that to look forward to as the day progresses. Sandbox starting off on the batting side. It's going to be a Sledge taken away. Something a little bit uncharacteristic there, but we have plenty of Sledge players in the pro circuit at the minute, given the changes that came through to Buck historically taking away. The frag grenades, of course, Sledge stepping in and being very, very popular.
Interesting, Bam. We're going to see the rest of them rein in. Sandbox obviously taking Sledge away to begin with. Maverick will be DarkZero's choice of attacker. Going to keep those hatches safe. We know that there's, well, they're going to try to anyway. There's obviously Hibana as well. We'll see whether that might just lead into a Kaid ban here, because obviously you don't necessarily, if you Sandbox, want them just completely sealed off. So Kaid would make it very difficult without the Maverick to be able to clear those hatches. So we'll see just what happens here. But there's going to be operators sneaking through one way or another. I
think what I've realized here, what DarkZero is going for, we saw them ban away on Coastline yesterday. They banned away Wamai and just brought tons of grenades every single round, usually 4, sometimes 6, and one round they even stepped into bringing 8, which is why it gives a bit more context to seeing those bans coming out. The Sledge, especially as the ban coming in from Sandbox, you look at it and think, oh, you kind of get it now. They're looking to take some of those grenades away, which the Maverick also then doubles up on. So you won't see as many grenades flying in here. Maybe you'll get an Iana and Finka being brought along as a collective, which of course give a good number of options. But it's interesting how the ban phase has essentially revolved entirely around frag grenades.
Absolutely that. You know, it's just looking at that previous play and exactly what teams have done before and how it's going to play out. As I say, if we have, we're going to be going down to, it's going to be Archives and Tellers actually to begin with. So it's going to be the first floor site. They're not going to be going into the basement. I would expect when we do go down there, we will see that Kaid brought along. There is the Thatcher on the board, of course. So that will clear the hatches out to a degree. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see how we go. But there's going to be a potential there for a little bit of electroclaw tricking going on as well to try and keep them closed if they do choose to bring that operator along. For the time being, there's going to be a top floor presence I would expect from Sandbox Gaming here. They're going to be looking to keep themselves wedged in, as you can see. We've got the deployable shield, we've got utility being expended up on the top floor. Bank very much a roaming map. You're welcome to get out there into the map and try and make it difficult. Verticality also important. No Sledge available, of course, so that's going to limit to a degree the verticality that can be found. We've not got any soft breach available, with no Ash, with no soft breach charges, no Zofia on the side of DarkZero, so maybe a little bit more of a sort of lateral push from them.
Yeah, very possibly. We'll see as it develops from here on out. Pambazoo, the nice little cheeky drone, sat tucked away inside of the leafage, or the foliage inside of lobby. Just to help give you an idea. Leafage, yeah, that was a new one.
Certainly new.
Yeah. Leafage.
Leafage, new to the English dictionary as well as to the
like the edgy 16-year-olds that are like, Skillage, XD. That kind of vibe? Nah, it's not going to stick. It's definitely going to be foliage moving on here out. I was going to say for Pambazoo, you're likely going to see him playing on that East Repel for most of the round. Think back to Julio, for example, from NIP when they played against IG on this match, or on this map. Just sat up on that Repel, watched through the Kanto wall, and gave challenge to anyone that stepped into the long white corridor. I think you might see him looking to do exactly the same here. There he is. And NGR out towards the east. Again, it's what I love about international competition. It's the division in styles where IG had all 5 members pushing from lobby. Here for DZ, you're seeing the split. They've got a couple in lobby, a couple on windows, one pushing out towards square. A very split setup, but it gives them a lot more map control a lot quicker, assuming they can get inside and start making things happen.
Canadian just being cautious there, making sure to give Elevator a good look over before pushing forward, making sure that it is indeed empty. He's going to start moving his way through the officers here, just trying to find any of these top floor roamers and just displace them. It's about forcing them to move around, just pushing them back, and if he can get them rotating into that elevator corridor, if Pamba is still out on the rappel, it could be a bit of joy for him, but I'm not sure that he is at the minute. Shaiol playing there. Hyper is going to find an opener for us. It's going to be a headshot onto Envy Taylor. Canadian just pinging out that utility as he goes, forcing players to move around. There it is. I said Shaiol out in that elevator corridor. Pamba was on the rappel, just waiting for his opportunity, and boy, does does he take it?
Such a solid power position. Already mentioned what we saw from Julio there. It'll be Playday playing it for BDS. You will always find a support player there. NJR up at the top of square. Knows at least one is down here. Don't think he quite sees the second, but this could be a flawless round coming in. Indeed it will. NJR closing out with both, and DarkZero with a fantastic start here on Bank.
Very solid from them. They recognised exactly what the setup was from Sandbox, and they just played into it perfectly. Got the Monty up there, Canadian, just pushing them around really well and just displacing them. And the key factor there is that they were set up ready for it. When those lines of sight were able to be used, they were used. Pamba, as soon as Shayol peeks out, bang, he gets the kill. As soon as Monty is pushing defenders around, there are people there, crossfires established, ready to get those kills.
What I like about it is it's such a stark contrast to what we saw between these two teams when they played, I believe it was yesterday morning. We had Sandbox against DarkZero on Coastline. And at the time we raised the concerns of DarkZero are arguably the most structured kind of... I want to say their approach to the game is like chess. You know, there are certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. You can't break those rules. They're not really a team that's going to step in and start swinging everywhere compared to what European teams might do, APAC might do. Even Oxygen in their own region sometimes employ that kind of play style. So it's different in terms of how they approach the game, and I always thought going to Coastline on a map that does revolve on being a little more aggressive and being able to take more, you know, risky plays, that it might come back to bite them. And it did yesterday. I'm glad here at least we are stepping onto a map that's a little bit bigger, it's a little more controllable, there is more room for DarkZero to work with.
So we're going to be heading down to a basement defense this time around for round 2. Sandbox deciding it's time already to bunker down on that basement floor and see what they can do. Haven't chosen to bring Denial along for the hatches, so it's going to be straightforward here for DarkZero to get in.
Here's one that's going to tickle your brain a little bit. Look at the secondary gadgets they brought along. There's no C4 present at all. There's 2 shields, there's a bulletproof on mute, which is something you very rarely get to see, and a bunch of impacts being stacked up as well. They're not really looking to play the denial game outside of the smoke being used, which makes me worry a little bit. The C4s normally being layered on top of the smoke will help you burn through about 45 seconds, but here relying solely on the smoke canisters, a much more limited window. If DarkZero can move with some pace and get control of server, which they will do with the Monty on side, this could be a fantastic round for them. When you've got the Monty to protect you, no C4s to come singing through, you bait out the smokes, it will be easy. But look at Harper, he's trying to contest it really aggressively here, but they can see everything on a drone. They know exactly what the game plan is from Sandbox. They know how to deal with it. And at this point, it's just the information gathering while someone else sets up elsewhere to make a play. Static onto NGR, traded out just a second later by Bambazoo. And Canadian still having this dancing game, drawing out the smoke canisters. One came out earlier, the second came through, and 2 kills have gone the way of DarkZero.
That's it. All that Canadian had to do there was burn enough time for Hyper to get himself into position, down those blue stairs, and start picking up kills. Exactly what he's done, DarkZero, working that very nice. I'm interested to see how they deal with these soft walls. There's covering at the normal plant spot. Canadian's been down there. They've got no soft destruction realistically to be able to open them up. They're just having to blast their way through them, which they've now nearly achieved. They can get themselves in there to get the diffuser down.
It's very clever. If you're wondering why it looks like Swiss cheat, it's because you can't put a soft breach on that wall. You can't really do much unless you've got range destruction outside of shooting it out, which DZ have now done. So maybe you wager it's a bit of a pointless waste of time, but either way you look at it, that clock has ran down to about 60 seconds left. They've got 1 smoke canister out. They still have a second in the back pocket. They've got an impact nade. They've got goo mines they can throw out when it comes online, but that is what they are going to be relying on, and you've got Pambazoo looking to play in from above to start threatening them inside of Orange. Hyper finding one onto Envy. This is a great round coming in for DZ. 1 more smoke coming in, going to ring out on towards Eclipse, who's going to stick this out, I think, unaffected. In fact, no, he is being hit, but he sticks to plant, won't go down, gets away with 1 tick of HP remaining, but that'll be more than enough to make sure it's committed. DZ are off-site in a 4 versus 2, and Sandbox have got a lot of work to do to save this round.
Great decision from Eclipse there, just knowing that he was able to stick through the damage that was coming out of that Toxic Babe and get the diffuser down. Shayol tries to move his way all the way up to that top floor hatch, see if he can get anything going here, but very unlikely. He knows that there's one inside of Archives, gets shut down by Pamba though, and Eclipse will finish the round off. Where have this DarkZero been for the last couple of days?
Let's not get too excited just yet, Ace. We're seeing the Monty plays coming in here, and that was a very direct-to-site setup, which was very good. And the prior round they did, you know, what's expected. You get control of that window rappel to look down towards Kanto. You have the shield very safely push up main stairs and start feeding you information. It's looked good and it's looked solid. I like how it's a lot more controlling than what we saw back on Coastline. But on the side of Sandbox, that's the team that you're now turning to and saying, all right, guys, what's your response? What can you do to impede DarkZero? Because they met the Monty up in the top floor in White Corridor and basically just kind of followed them all the way down throughout the map to the stage that G2 had, I think, about 10 seconds on the clock with no information of what was on site, had to go for a Hail Mary and got absolutely sprayed down. And sure enough, that's the response we're seeing coming in. Static living up to his name and bringing something a little bit more strong than static electricity. He'll be zapping that Monty all day long, assuming it was still here. But on the side of DarkZero, I think they've read into this. You know for 2 rounds, if you've caught them off guard with the Monty and they can't respond, you can just say, well, they're likely going to have a timeout here, talk about what they can do to counter the Monty, and then we just change up what we're doing entirely.
Well, this is the thing, Des. If I've thought of it, the likelihood is I would hope that DarkZero have thought of it. And that is exactly how it looks like it's played out, as you say, just for going that Monty. Now, don't get me wrong, the Clash is still not necessarily a bad pick. They've brought it for a reason. That reason is no longer there, but it could still serve a purpose, and Static could make it difficult for DarkZero to push forward here. That said, they do have the Thatcher on side with NJR, so again, direct counters in place, and that's what Siege is all about. It's counterplay to counterplay, and just how do you outmaneuver your opponents?
Absolutely. Small things here, and looking towards the side of Sandbox, they've got quite a bit to waste time through. You touch on the castle, the mirror, also looking, of course, in towards the Clash. As long as we don't see a silly death coming in against Static, this could be an excellent time-wasting comp. And I think for DarkZero, they haven't looked, again, as I mentioned earlier, challenged in either of those first 2 rounds. They've pushed up and taken the ground they want for free outside of that initial challenge from the Ela inside of server. There has been nothing else in those prior 2 rounds. So I don't want to see Static, for example, getting a little bit too aggressive and finding himself tagged out from a silly angle they haven't considered. We've seen that happen to a couple of teams over the last 24 hours.
There you go. As I said, the EMP grenades just being utilised there to force the Clash back. You can see the timer down on the bottom of your screen there as the EMP effect will wear off and the shield will come back online and the electricity can be used, but that's not the whole purpose of Clash. The fact that she's there is still a stopping point for DarkZero until they get rid of her. They don't have anything really to break that shield away from her, such as a Kali, such as a Sophia, to actually get her moving in that sense. So still a difficulty to deal with. They might need to outmaneuver Static.
Normally, if this wasn't a Clash, absolutely, you wouldn't be able to play where Static is currently holding, right? You'd be forced back from playing up towards that north side of the long white hallway. You'd be having to kind of step back up towards the top of White Stairs, get back on site, play inside of Janitor. It just impedes you a lot. But Pambazu, again, is getting the same angle opened up, and I like this because now you've got the push coming in essentially from stock office, where you can challenge in through the window. You've got the Kanto spot being opened up to come up the other direction as well. Essentially, walking down this corridor right now is going to be a death sentence, and that is step 1. The big issue is it's taken them 90 seconds to get to this point. That's a lot of time to clear out one hallway.
And JR does deal with the Clash. That's going to be taken down now. 5 versus 4. A nice entry for DarkZero there. It was, if they could have chosen a first operator to take down, I dare say it would likely have been the Clash. So NJR doing great work for them. Nova just looking to make a nuisance of himself on square there, but it's too late, Des. Like you say, Eclipse is in. He's got the cover from 2 windows. Out comes the Nitro, way short. Not going to have any impact. Too late is the cry from Nova as he tries to get himself up the square skylight stairs there. The diffuser is down and activated, and DarkZero are attacking well here.
I think Nova realises where he is. There's a man on the window and he can't see the one behind him either. Surely the Twitch sees him first. Nadian now knows. The call will be screamed that he's sat on the stairs, and sure enough, Eclipse responds in kind. NJR, another one coming in. Pamba closing it out. It's a flawless round for DarkZero, and sure, it took a long time to get the white hallway clear, but once that was done, the rest was at lightning pace.
Exactly. They knew where the sticking point was. They knew what they needed to deal with, and the thing is, they didn't panic. They didn't worry about the fact that the clock was ticking down. They knew exactly what they're going to do. The gameplay was in plan, and they executed it fantastically.
They did.
Round number 4 then, DarkZero are going to find themselves attacking onto staff room and open area by the looks of things. So Sandbox just taking a full tour of the map here, Des.
The thing is, DarkZero can just constantly look to mind game them in a way, in the fear of them. Oh, I tell you what, I like this pick. Oryx we've seen a bit, so far in this event. Used mainly as a roamer, used to smash through walls. The introduction of the Thunderbird has made him a lot more effective to bring along because you aren't risking dying to one less bullet by charging through a wall. You can get yourself juiced back up. But let's not also forget what Oryx can do. Can knock down Monty. Now, I'm not really expecting DZ, once they realize there's an Oryx, to put themselves in a position where Canadian's going into a 1 versus 1 against an Oryx. They'll make sure he's got backup. They'll make sure he's got cover in case the Oryx does step forwards. But it's just a consideration of if Charles can get in the right spot at the right time, they do have an effective counter to the Monty.
We do have Taylor on the Mozzie there, just looking to deny some intel as well. No surprise with the top floor presence. They're just wanting to get as many surprises for DarkZero as they can. Shio just using the run there, I think, to clear out some of the balustrade on those stairs, the handrail, yeah, all cleared out. There you go.
A lot of teams remove them away just in case they're getting in the way of, vision for a start, bullets soaking those up, whatever you want to call it. Helps remove those away. Opening up the hatches, of course, so you can use Oryx's signature ability, the hatch hopper himself, able to take himself up and peek over hatches or climb up them entirely. I don't think I've ever really seen in professional play someone just hop up to take a look. Because if they see your head pop in there like a weasel, guess what? It's whack-a-weasel, whack-a-mole, whatever you want to call it. That head's being taken out clean.
The reality is you're only jumping up a hatch if you're confident that there's nobody there, because like you said, at this level you're almost certainly going to get slammed straight back down if there is somebody present. So the Oryx there just always looking to try and get onto the flank. For the time being, Shiol is going to play up on the top floor. Needs to be careful, did lose his life there previously to the Pambazoo rappel, but it'll be the same job. Opening up the elevator wall, so Shiol needs to be careful here. I don't know if he's just going to peek out and try and make a challenge onto that window. I don't think he will. He's likely to just stay in position. They're just trying to avoid that top floor control from DarkZero coming in here. But once again, Canadian's back on the shield. He's moving upstairs, and they're just doing this dance perfectly around Sandbox. Bring the Monty. When there's a clash, don't bring the Monty. Bring the Monty again. It's just been great so far from DarkZero.
I find it really interesting they left that hard breach at Skyros down onto the right side of the elevator wall until the Monty was at the top of the stairs. I'm not sure if they were nervous about giving an extra angle for a defender that would be sat inside of elevator to challenge the Monty as he was pushing up. But it's a small little thing there that clocks in the round that I thought was quite interesting to note. Shiol playing downstairs, the hatch hopper himself, we touched on him already. If they aren't aware of his presence downstairs, he could play massive spoiler here. Hyper, Canadian, both moving on past him, in fact charging their way forwards, and Shiol maybe being a little bit defensive so far, but he doesn't got to go just yet. Envy doing some great work from below, and here he goes on the jump up.
That's perfect, because Envy's just taken Pamba down, so Shiol can get himself up there. He could have pushed into corridor if he wanted to, but he didn't need to, as Hyper came to him, made the challenge, and we've just seen it there. There's that ability used in order to get a kill and hit Hyper on the flank. Well played from Sandbox, and the Oryx has been a good call there. Eclipse, however, gets himself inside of Tellers there and manages to find himself a kill onto Envy Taylor, bringing us back to 4 versus 3. But there's still a lot of work for DarkZero to do here. They've got about 30 seconds to get themselves inside a site and into a position to be able to think about getting this diffuser down. And Shiol's going to play spoiler Des. He's just waiting for his opportunity. He's going to creep up those stairs in a minute, and he's going to hit them from behind hard. Here he goes. He knows they're inside. He sees his man. He gets one. Can he find the Monty? Not before Nova does. And there's the final kill from Static. Much better round from Sandbox, and it was the unpredictability that did it. Shiol just making a nuisance of himself, not covering a lot of ground, but covering all the ground that he needed to.
We spoke coming into the competition about the effectiveness of the Envy Shiol duo, right? You think about, like, I don't know, Citizen and Virtue as a pairing in Europe, for example. These guys are that, but in APAC North. They can be terrifying on the right day. We haven't really seen that duo shine for much of the last year. It really was, back to the finals at the start of this year when they were last as terrifying as they've always used to be. That round there, you saw them coming together and not pushing around together. It's not really their style to literally sit on top of each other, but they'll both be out on the roam or both be on the entry looking to cause some trouble. And in that round there, a perfect example. Envy drawing attention downstairs inside of Archives area. You had Shiol dancing around as well, quietly off to the side whilst the focus was on the upstairs. And between the both of them, just kept DarkZero guessing, asking questions, having to push areas they didn't want to push into. Very effective round, and it finally gets Sandbox on the board.
Going to be heading back to Archives and Tellers then. It was the round that we saw them defend first of all. DarkZero were able to pick apart the top floor hold that they had and then work down, and it was pretty straightforward from there. Opening up the rotation will be MV Taylor to allow some movement between Office and the janitor's closet there, but Canadian this time not on the Monty, Des.
10 seconds left.
They used that quite effectively last time when attacking this site. Pamba opened up the line of sight from elevators, but MV Taylor dealt with that. I think it was likely from a garage run out because we saw him hovering around garage previously, and I think he was probably down there again. It might just send the message to Pamba that, you know what, we're not going to get away with that. We need to dip away, or it's at least going to burn another DarkZero body to be able to watch that run out.
In contrast to how they defended the downstairs, we've got a couple of C4s coming in. The Pulse also being on side here to play from below. The consideration coming in here for Nova is while he's playing on the downstairs, waiting for a C4 to come through or the opportunity for one to strike in, he can see exactly how many members are on the rappel. He can have an idea if anyone is trying to push him from out towards the west as well. There's lots of information that he can feed back to his team to then push forward and act on the back of, and hopefully that nets them a couple of C4 kills throughout the round. For DarkZero, business as usual. Pamba starting himself out towards the west, getting elevator wall opened up, and Hyper looking to come in from square side. So a two-prong push coming in. The only issue is the man that's playing here inside this little 90 corner Shyle has got support from inside a janitor. So Hyper can't simply just walk up to him and go for a frag. It needs a bit of support from the other side too.
So some utility cleared out there that is going to help this top floor clearance. Pamba's got his line of sight. Hyper's able to move into square skylight. So it's all poised at the minute for a little bit of a flashpoint here. Shyol's going to be very conscious about stepping out from behind that vending machine. It's providing all the cover he needs. But the last time he did, he was cut down by Pambazu. He's not going to want a repeat of that. Now Canadian just looking for the vertical angle down into open just to make sure it's not being covered by somebody in there. And it's not for the time being. He's safe to move in. But Harper gets himself a kill onto Eclipse. Shyle manages to dip away. Pamba unable to impact on the man moving around the elevator corridor. So right now, Sandbox not looking bad.
Shyle has masterclassed that. 90 seconds holding on this side with Pamba at one end, Hyper at another, and just as Canadian gets into a spot to be able to challenge, he's dropped down the hatch. He should be dead to rights. Hyper and Pamba should have had his number. He should not have been able to get back into Janitor and away from sight, but he's pulled it off. It's a master heist inside of Bank here, and now there's about 55 seconds for DarkZero to play with. They're down a man, and Harper not spotted. They have no idea.
They've missed him.
That he's there, Tim.
Definitely missed him. And he's just going to hold on to his position now. Is Harper. He's just going to wait for this push to come down main stairs potentially. And he will play spoiler. No, there goes the drone. So they've spotted him out. Harper's going to have to do something here because he's going to find his challenge.
He's gone.
He's gone. And this is it. Sandbox are doing this fantastically, Des. Every time they get picked up, they've got a rotation. They've got the next move. Nova's got his next move and he's gone 2 steps ahead as well. A kill onto Pamba, a kill onto Canadian. 5 versus 2 now. Sandbox are fighting back, Des. They're looking to level out this half. The diffuser's down cold on the ground. There's 12 seconds left to go. Nova with a third. Can he make it 4? He sprays him down. Can he finish the job? He goes to pistol, but no! Harper takes it from under his nose, but Sandbox won't mind that. It's going to be round 5 going to them. 3-2 in favour of DarkZero, but Sandbox fighting back.
Imagine DarkZero are writing a strongly worded letter to Steam here to report that this game should not be down as an FPS, it should be down as a horror game. All game round chasing shadows, always wondering where'd that player go. We saw him 2 seconds ago, but they could just not catch anyone. It was like trying to punch smoke. It wasn't happening. Really, really well played by Sandbox. Again, a couple of tweaks should maybe make as DarkZero there. The pinch onto Shyle in the first place was the massive slip up they made. They could have made that a 4 versus 4 after Eclipse had already gone down, but just couldn't quite catch him or the mirror in time. Again, can't stress it. Brilliant play by Sandbox.
Sandbox reminded me a little bit of, you know, those animations where you'll have like 10 objects and they all move in a certain way that they just miss colliding with each other, and it just like repeats itself over and over, and you just watch them all sort of just miss each other. It was like watching that, the way that Sandbox, every time DarkZero came near to them, they just had that next move, and they were just slipping out of the way, and they were just onto the next path, onto the next challenge, and it was really, really well played from Sandbox. Very, very nice.
It was indeed. Again, a couple of things DarkZero can improve on there, but after how the groups have gone for them so far, they know they've got a couple of things they need to look at. Let's see how the next round plays out here. A nice defense inside the base, by the looks of it, potentially a setup coming in inside of open area. As wonderfully pointed out by our observer, you can see up the floor holes that have been opened inside of the stock office. So if someone tries to vault in and someone is in open area, well, that could very comfortably be a freebie. The reinforced wall suggesting that you will see someone up here.
As you say, the extension is comprehensive.
Mute jammer behind the desk as well. They've got one watching the door, and one that's... Let's go look, medics, here. Look behind the desk there, inside the room. There's one on the actual door itself and one behind the desk as well. You're not going to see that. You're not going to know on a quick drone arcade there's definitely one on both sides of the door. No, that will catch a drone or two if you're not careful. Absolutely it will.
And as you say, that's what Sandbox are banking on here, because as we said last time around, it was the movement, it was their knowledge of exactly what DarkZero were doing and just keeping themselves just off their radar, and that is going to support them in doing it as well. Static, though, has been pinged out by the Jackal, something that DarkZero have done to try and mitigate that problem. Canadian switching away and being able to track those roamers as they're moving around. But Envytail, he's going to have himself a little peek hole. Is Hyper going to get caught out here, Des? I don't think he will, as Envytail takes a few warning shots and dips himself back away. But they're not going to be confidently aware of Envytail's position here because of those mute jammers.
This is going to be one of those rounds I really want to go back and map out the setup from Sandbox. I think it's really intelligent. They're stopping them pushing in from the west side out towards lobby and in by those mute jammers. And then you're thinking, okay, well, our sweeper's going to come in west side. It's where they so often start, and they want to get inside of open area. To stop that, you've got other setups coming in inside of Tellers and Archives itself to contest into that hallway coming in from Lone Office. And then you've actually got a proper setup inside of open area itself to contest upwards. Shyle, bro, what a rat. Sat inside behind the printer, waiting for them to take control of open area, and he will spring in at the right time. I don't think Eclipse has seen him because there's no soft bottom side of this wall. They don't know that he's here, and he could play massive spoiler if left unchecked, and there he is finding one. Pushing out for a second as well, sees one more inside the small office, but Canadian strikes first. So what could have been massive has been reduced somewhat. Static, one back onto NJR, but the work has been done by this roam strat. 2 minutes wasted, 2 members dead on the other side. It's a good start for Sandbox, but DarkZero are starting to warm up.
They certainly are, but the question now comes, where is the point of execution for DarkZero? They're opening up those hatches, but where do they drop? Do they go directly into site? Do they go to vault? Where is the push going to come from? Because the problem they've got is that Sandbox are everywhere, Des. They've got a man over in vault, they've got one in server, they've got multiple angles covered, and it does feel a little bit like DarkZero aren't confident of exactly where to go. Plenty of smoke utility left yet, 2 canisters yet to be burnt. Nova's going to play them from inside of sight if he gets a chance, but he won't because Canadian just rushes in, Des, and that's the answer of where the push is going to come from. But as I said, they were going into the middle of a crossfire from Sandbox. They had 3 men all in different positions, and DarkZero just ran straight into the middle of that kill box.
There's a famous saying in a couple of games that I used to play, or still do to some level, of it's better to make a stupid decision and commit to it as a team than to all have different ideas that maybe are better, but you're all doing them independently. I'm never too sure how happy I am about all 3 members dropping in through a hatch and trying to push in sight at once. But the initial outcome worked. Nova had no idea that was coming, and fair enough. You've got a smoke out on the field. You don't think, okay, they're going to see the yellow smoke. There's just no way DarkZero drop into that. You're wrong. They give it a good go. But as you mentioned, sandwiched in by Harper, who was sat inside of red. Another one who was sat inside of Vault. Became a little game of ring around the roses towards the end. But another good round by Sandbox. Excellent final 3 defenses, thinking about how poor the first 2 were.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's been a fascinating game so far. As you say, Sandbox really showing an ability. The thing is, what we're looking at here, you know, yes, we're not talking about qualification to playoffs or not. That much is done. What we are looking at here, for a team like Sandbox, who we're going to be seeing on Friday, maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday, Des, who knows? It depends how far they get in those playoffs. But we're looking at a team like Sandbox now and thinking, right, what are their abilities? What are the strengths here at this tournament? What are they going to bring to those playoffs here at the 6 Sweden Major? You know, are they going to light it on fire, or are they going to be able to be played around? And right now, they're showing great adaptation to what DarkZero brought, and it's been a lot of fun to watch.
It's another one of those that I look at and think, is it the right idea? We hear about teams all the time saying, okay, we've qualified now, save strats, don't show everything you've got. And take, for example, their really cool setup there they had inside of open area that I really liked, even though initially to begin with, it did get picked apart with a couple of members going down to DarkZero. that's the kind of thing I thought that you might try and save for getting into playoffs. But also on their side, they may turn around and say, well, that was an old strat that we employed, say, 2 or 3 months ago, but we aren't running it at the minute. We've got new juicy ones ready for playoffs. So that may be why it's a bit of a bait and switch. Teams can look at it and have to play that guessing game of, is that a go-to strat for Sandbox, or have they got something else up their sleeve waiting for playoffs? It's a whole like mind game of its own.
Oh, it really is. Like I said, it's always a little bit of a weird spot for teams to find themselves in, is the games where they've qualified. You know, do you keep that momentum? Do you keep playing your best, or do you try and cover a few things up? You know, where do you go with it? But for the time being, Sandbox are going to the rappels here. They're going to try and get some angles. MV Taylor actually all the way up to the rooftop there. They know they're going to have to do a little bit of a top floor clearance. They are attacking onto an open area defense here from DarkZero. Immediate challenge from Pamba on the castle, who's playing inside of Tellers at the minute. So looks like Sandbox are getting themselves some good top floor control here, can start opening things up. They do have the book for soft destruction, and they are starting to pick apart those defenses. But as you say, Eclipse, what's he going to do from this elevator?
Being supported by some information from below with the Pulse 2, just to give him an idea as to how many there are, where it is they're pushing from, what the go-to game plan is. Canadian feeding that back up on Static here, stepping out on his swing, and they're trying to, well, they have got it open at this point. The mirror window being popped open gives a lovely long line of sight for Static, where he can see basically all the way through this first floor. Eclipse, I think, is still unchecked here. I don't believe they spotted him out, even with Iana, Jackal, the Zero, everything, and finally the C4 comes out from Nadian, finds Static for free. And again, we see these mirror windows being incredibly impactful. Hyper sat all the way back. Now might find himself with more challenge with Harper opening up from above.
Big mistake there, allowing that death to come in
Shyle.
from Canadian underneath. You've got to get in there and clear the Pulse out. If not, you can't play on the hatches. They're the only dangerous location, Des, and he was just up too close to it, is the problem. But Shyle comes back in, rescues the situation, reacts well. This is what we've said. Reaction has been great from Sandbox. They recognise them Pulse underneath, they go and deal with it. NJR manages to get a very late trade for those two, taking down Shyle.
Oh,
and
Envy,
Taylor knows he's there, he's got to win the fight. But no, somehow Pamba manages to win that one out. Hyper onto Nova, 1v3 now. It's all up to Harper. He's got 15 seconds left to go. He's facing castle barricades, he's facing utility, he's facing potentially challenges. But for the time being, DarkZero just dipping away from these fights. They know they don't need to take any risk. There you go. He runs straight past Pamba. Easiest kill of his game. And that's going to be DarkZero taking their first event.
There's one above as well that was going to shut him down regardless. I don't even think it was the man to his left that got the kill. Was indeed the one from up on high. That 2K flurry in the middle of the round that came for Charlotte, thought, okay, now things are really moving. But, I know, MV...
I feel your pain, MV.
He hasn't had the best game. He's had a good tournament so far. I think actually he's the only player from Sandbox that is currently in our top 10 ratings across the whole competition. So he's having a knockout tournament, just not quite a knockout game, and that's okay. No one's perfect. Look at some of the strongest teams you've seen here. NIP day one, almost being knocked down on bank by IG when they went down 5-1. BDS yesterday, some of the, I don't want to say the worst games we've ever seen from them, but in recent memory, that's some of the worst performances I've seen. People have down days, and that's okay.
Thing is, you're going to have a quiet game when do you want it? In the last, the last group stage game when you've already qualified, or in the quarterfinal? I know which I'm going to pick.
MV Taylor, I sleep for this game.
Exactly. You have a rest, Envy. You've played very well so far.
Real?
Give yourself a little rest. You don't worry about it. So, heading into round number 8 then. 4-3 now, DarkZero. They move on to their second defensive site. It's going to be down in the basement once again, lockers and CCTV. But a big mid-floor presence. It's something that we're seeing more and more, is that extension. It's something that we saw in EUL use pretty well. Na'Vi very effective on this roam game when they were downstairs. We're going to see it here from DarkZero all the way up to the top floor. They've got utility, they've got jammers, they've got alibi decoys, they've got everything going on up there.
A lot of info, but equally the same can be said for Sandbox, and it was the same lineup as we saw in the prior round. A little bit of a tag coming in from Charles, I think, there, but not finding himself out. I do think Zero's really interesting as an operator. You know, we look at it, and I don't think anyone sees it and thinks, oh, that's basically Valkyrie. Yeah, it's arguably worse than Valkyrie because he's got the 4 cameras. Sure, no C4 on side, but a decent primary. double hard breach gadget now coming in, and a few teams did say you'll likely see Buck and Zero being brought along an awful lot, and in some cases, and we've seen it from a couple of teams already, completely foregoing bringing any form of hard breach except for the double hard breach gadget coming along on the Zero and the Buck. In this round, it's only the double on Nova. Envy still playing with the flashes, but it just goes to show how those changes have really opened things up now, where you aren't saying we must bring 2 hard breaches on most maps. You can afford 1. Static, a freebie onto Canadian, who was none the wiser as to what was going on there. And even worse to note, it's a smoke that they've lost to start the round off, Ace.
Honestly, I absolutely love a cheeky garage push. Get yourself down there and just mix it up. For some reason, it's just one of them things that's not always expected, and you just get that sort of a situation. Canadian just exposing too much of himself and taking the loss there. Pamba looking to make this challenge on to the man who's still causing a nuisance for himself. There you go. Static finally taken down, and of course, Envy Taylor lost along the way as well. DarkZero, still 4 players here, and still plenty of presence out on the road. Shiol trying to hunt down the man on the top floor. That red footprint is going to give him a good length of time, pinging out the alibi. NJR is just trying to be mobile here, but look at him, Des. He's surrounded on all sides. He's hit through the soft wall by Nova, and that levels us up 3-3 now. And Sandbox Gaming can finally start focusing on that bottom floor.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a while because they've been trying to deal with what would be Aroma and NJR. For Canadian getting pushed out in Garage, it was initial early aggression that maybe was a little bit, I don't know, it's opportunistic by Static, right? Like, the rest of the team weren't in position to capitalize off his aggression, but he found 1 kill onto the smoke, no less, as well. A fantastic first pick to find, and then progress forward from there to drain more resources from DarkZero. Impact nades, 2 players having to try and play for a trade. Great response by DarkZero to send those 2 players after him, but it did mean elsewhere around the map, things sort of slowed down for a while and were out of sync. We're into the final 30 seconds. It is a 3 versus 3. Only a couple of drones on side for Nova and the Sanko here, so a bit of work to be done, and it might even just be a drop straight down inside the vault, as if he's still alive from that one as well. Knows the one's inside the vault, but Harper comes on the flank. A great pinch push, and now they've got the left side control. Sees one tucked in. What a headshot from Harper coming through. What more can they find? Apparently it's everything. A great round by Sandbox and a brilliant west side execute.
Absolute beauty from Harper there, just stepping out of elevators, finding his man, and at that point it pretty much ends the round. We see the freebie for Static to start things off there, but couldn't get anything more going out of the garage. He was then sort of rushed by the Vigil and by Pamba as well. So a good attempt from DarkZero, but Sandbox just once again clinging onto the coattails here, Des, and they just refuse to let DarkZero get any breathing space in this.
It's really, really well played, absolutely. And again, given how shaky the first couple of rounds were, I'm really pleased to see they fought their way back in. We are talking a lot about Sandbox, but DarkZero are still having a couple of good rounds. How they dealt with, for example, Static inside a garage. I touched on it in the round. Really well played. Lost 1 man, sent 2 straight in there for Static and pushed aggressively. Weren't scared, happy to try and play for that, and they ended up getting the 1-for-1 back, even though it did take a few men to get it through. Let's see how round number 9 plays out. For some reason, Ace, I just can't shake that familiar feeling. You know, one, it's, I don't know, it always seems to creep up about this time in a game when a score sat at 4-4, 5-5, just seems to follow us around a little bit. Overtime could be on the way if this carries on.
It's absolutely uncanny. We'll have to get somebody to do the stats at the end again. I think for the last couple of tournaments we've been the duo with
Wasn't SI like 11.7 rounds per game average?
I think we usually the duo established as the duo with the most, the highest overtime rate of any duo. Although I know it happens, Luke, they have had a good few overtimes, and they were the same at SI as well.
It's one of those that, of course, has nothing to do with us. It's just some weird
there's absolutely no control over it, but it just seems to keep happening.
Yeah, it's a crazy one. Let's see how things go for Sandbox in this round. They've got 2 or 3 of them starting out towards the northwest, 2 out here down towards the southeast. So a nice split coming through for the side of Sandbox. Spoke about it again earlier on, how their counterparts from APAC in IG tend to all push in from one direction on this map. Whereas for their North compatriots in Sandbox, they tend to all push in through various areas of the map. Canadian doing his best pulse impression here, as we see so often him playing on the downstairs with that pulse, feeding information across to the rest of the team. He's been taken off smoke duty after what happened in the last round, saying, look, don't play on site now, get out there and give us some info.
I mean, it's probably just down to the side.
It is, absolutely. But it's a funny story, Ace. Let me have that one.
But, yeah, you know, I think...
It's more funny than the Canadians been told off and said, no, you can't play smoke anymore.
I think if they were down on basement, it might have been the same story, if I'm honest. But as you say, you can't be exposing your feet.
You are such a killjoy.
Can't be exposing your feet like that, can you? Can't be giving them back.
You mean like me, with my no shoes?
Oh, you're a no shoes caster?
No, I'm normally not. Now I am. Leon plays without shoes on, I noticed yesterday. At the end of the game, you always see him get his trainers out and start putting them back on.
Okay then, Shio working his way down the square skylight stairs. Going to meet up with the castle barricade at the bottom, attacking onto Archives and Tellers. And Sandbox pretty well established here close to the site. There's one of the, it's going to be Pambazoo. I was going to say one of the DarkZero players is trying to get aggressive up onto that barricade. It is Pambazoo on the Kaid. Eclipse it is, however, that finds the opener. That's going to be a big kill onto Harper, taking down the Hibana. So that's removed the hard breach. It's going to be down to 0 if they want to get anything. Here goes Hyper with 1. Can he get any more? Pamba beat him to it with the kill onto Embe. Nova will shut down NJR, but at 4 versus 2, you feel like this is a round that is going in the favour of DarkZero, and we're just getting to that point there where we're bouncing back and forward. Eclipse, he's there, he sees the man. Static has absolutely no idea, gets shut down on the main stairs, and it's all up to Nova now. 40 seconds, 1v4.
I love how they just have the read and they know where they are in these closing moments as well. He hasn't rotated off to lobby, but no, he was coming down main stairs. Unfortunately, a Gon 6 not going to do you too much good at the very end of their one, sadly, Static. But a good round for DarkZero. They pull themselves back into the lead at 5 and 4. This game feeling very, very close. The occasional round like this one, where the flankers go unwatched. It's unbelievable damage coming out from DarkZero.
Yeah, I mean, my concern for Sandbox here really is, I think what we're seeing, they're not drawn in effectively. I'm not feeling that they've got enough information when they're coming in for attack.
I told you Canadian was off smoke duty.
Think about the kills that they've got. They've got Pulse with a Nitro down in basement. Canadian, he was playing on top of a hatch. They had no idea that there was a Pulse underneath. He gets himself a freebie with the Nitro. Just there, they've had Vigil moving up blue stairs. They don't know they're going to get hit on the flank. Absolutely no idea. Free kill. So for me, Sandbox, you've got to improve your information game. You've got to be finding these roamers. You've got to be making sure not only do you find them, but that you keep tabs on them.
The scariest thing is, of course, they've got like 14 cameras, right? You've got your 10 drones, you've got your 4 cams coming out from Zero, you've got Jackal, you've got Iana, who isn't really used to flank watch. Obviously, it's not the point of a gadget. It's more aggressive in use, or at least to take control of an area of the map safely before you actually have operators step into it. And even with that, they're still getting slapped on the flank. Of course, Vigil very problematic when that gadget is on. When he isn't sprinting, you can barely see him. If he is sprinting, you get a nice bit of distortion. But outside of that, you may very well may not know that he is on his way. You do get the white line around the screen to indicate, but equally it's not always the most useful in those situations. Let's see how the downstairs defense shapes out. I mentioned again that Troy has been taken away from playing on the smoke, but it's back on that Pulse, clearly valuing that information a little too much. And I think this is one of the first, I want to say one of the first maps I think I ever played when I picked up Siege. And Pulse playing in gold bars is like the synonymous position for Rainbow Six Siege for me.
Well, it is, and anybody wondering why, if you've got a Pulse inside of what we refer to as gold bars, it's the room at the end of the red corridor perfectly. Look, it's full of gold bars, imagine.
Weird that.
So you get a player inside of there on the Pulse, and look at where you can scan to. Bottom of blue stairs, all of server, default plant spot. You can just feed so much information, and all those walls are completely solid. They can't be breached. There's nothing that can be done to impact you on there without dropping somebody into vault. So it's a great power position. You can feed that information to your red corridor player. They can try to either hit the smokes, they can hit the Nitro if they've got one in hand. It's just a great play.
Is indeed. I thought for a second we'd see 2 or 3 members of DarkZero pushing their way up the main stairs there and up onto the top floor, but Canadian hightailed it back to side pretty quickly. Shile in a very precarious position because they've seen him for the last 30 seconds or so, thanks to Nadian, who's still sat here on the Pulse. The cardiac scanner was out towards main stairs earlier. Now he's in that, again, infamous gold bars location, and you can see members of Sandbox slowly starting to move their way over, by the looks of it, to a push on the east side. There's a couple of them over there. There's a couple more rotating over. Harper looking to join up with the rest of the team, and that's when you can start thinking about this execute starting to push through. Harbridge committed onto one of these walls. Nova, information in. All they need to do is for this to open up and they can zap it out, and it could be all too easy. And there's that information we were talking about. They now have a full idea as to what's going on.
A little bit of a standoff that you've got there. Evil Eye Cam sees the Zero Cam, but dare not open up to zap it because the Zero Cam will do the same in return. They're going to open the hatch, open the wall, and Sandbox in a position to potentially get a diffuser down. But exactly as I described as you had that combination. Canadian's going to have to do something here, but the utility's been baited out. Harper shoots out the nitro. The smoke canister goes in, but there is far too much time for NJR to be able to burn down now. There is no other option for the denial. There's 2 smoke canisters left, and Sandbox just need to keep pushing this. They've got Nova up on the hatch with the diffuser. He needs to get himself down there and start thinking about putting it down.
Composure here as well. NGR is holding on to those canisters until Canadian makes the call. They're waiting for Sandbox to try and make the plan happen, but there's one also pushing down main stairs. Envy on Charles' characteristic operator in the Zofia is trying to make something happen, but it's DarkZero finding all the kills. Nova hits the deck. Envy, the last one left standing, a solo kill to his name, and has got 4 to find in the round if they're going to have anything to say about this one. Here in comes for the drop. Knows that they're all scattered out towards the east, and the toe shots, well, people pay a lot of money for those. In this case, it gets you a very critical point, and round on the board, DarkZero up to match point.
Nothing that Envy could realistically do there. It just completely fell apart for Sandbox. They tried to get themselves in the position, and it was a shame. They had control over server, they had control over the hatch. They just lost those few gunfights. Beautiful aggression from DarkZero in the mid to late round there to get in there and start getting those kills, and it was a beautiful example of Pulse being used in gold bars. We discussed it at the beginning. Canadian absolutely delivered. We'll forgive him his transgression on the smoke, Des. It put him on the Pulse, and he was able to just really demonstrate to us why that is such a power position.
This is interesting. Nova changing off at the last second from the Zero. I was going to say they've run this lineup the entire half. It would be really interesting to make such a big change now. Would have been understandable, given how things have shaped up for them in the last couple of rounds. From 4-4 to 6-4, DarkZero have held their own and battled their way up to match point. At this point, it cannot make a massive difference, but what it does do is potentially have an impact on standings here. Team 1, of course, sat in first place, are playing against Vitality right now. I'm not sure how that game's going, but it could have been Sandbox potentially jumping into first place if this game had gone their way and Team 1 it hadn't. Got to consider what this means for potential matchups across in the playoffs as well. Again, a reminder in case you're unfamiliar with how this works. You finish first in your group, you get matched up by a second place team from another group. You finish in second place, you get matched up against a first place team from another group. So there is something to be said for playing your best, getting as many points as you can, and potentially getting yourself a weaker opponent. I say potentially, because there are some scary teams finishing second place.
They really are, but yeah, you know, you never know how exactly that is going to work. You know, look at Group D, for example. It's not finished off yet, but it looks likely to be Damwon or Empire going through in second. And, you know, you really don't want to be playing Damwon, Kira or Empire because they've both been very tough teams. But as you say, we will have that draw. We will have everything later on. We'll see how that shapes up. And when we know those matchups, you might be looking back to these games and thinking, if Sandbox just managed to get the win there, they have a different draw. But for the time being, DarkZero, they've got work to do, Des. This one is not done and dusted yet. 6-4, they need one more round. They are defending open area here. They won it back in round number 7. It was their first defensive side. They're going to look for a repeat of that. Static absolutely shut down by Canadian.
Really big start coming out. Static, not the man to be dying out here as well. 2 frag grenades in back pocket, no longer available. Envy balancing one back. It's definitely not the end of the world for them, and at least he's getting himself a second kill in the game, eh, Ace? 2-9 at this point. Got a lot of work to do in this round for a team if they want to get over the finish line. They've all got themselves grouped up inside of White Corridor. Of course, looking up towards the top floor, this is where they're starting things out, but need to start moving themselves down towards open area. They've done the first step. They've lost a man along the way. How many more can they afford to shed before they start looking at the site?
That's the question. NJR just working through that hatch, just conscious that there could be somebody underneath him. I'm not sure that there is at this point in time, but he's just keeping a close eye on it. Pamba as well, working those hatches. All about the verticality so far on this site. Envy Taylor opening things up now, trying to make sure that there's nobody playing inside of Archives and Tellers, which wouldn't be an unusual position. We saw defenders piling back through there into the admin office previously. try and use that rotation when we saw this side defender.
Shyle
taking a ton of damage, but somehow goes into elevator, comes back out and takes down NJR.
I mean, NJR swinging there aggressively and hoping he'll re-peek and get the kill, but didn't land a single shot. When Shyle stepped back out, that'll be a real kicker and one that he'll look back on and say, man, my bad guys, I really should have been winning that one. That could be a difference maker in the round. I know Shyle is on no HP, but it means they can play for trades here. I say that. Nova gets banged off from the far corner. Shyle, he just hightails it out of there. Wants nothing to do with the angle for now. Envy Taylor playing on the upstairs. We're down to the last 30 seconds, Tim. This is where things get a bit dicey. They can't rotate out towards the east. There is a double reinforced door present. They've got a yellow ping. The indication coming in. There is someone hanging around by a printer. They're looking for the angle. Smokes might come through, but this drop could be lethal. There it is. Hyper finds one. A second drops through. It's like a leapfrog. But Pambazoo finds his shutdown as well. And Envy, all he can do is look into a pit of despair. It's like the void opening up before him. Doesn't want to go for the drop through. Wants to protect that precious KDA. He's 2-9. Doesn't want to go to being 2-10. DarkZero take the game. It is a consolatory one. They only get the 3 points. They can't fight their way into the top 2, but a promising sign for the NA team to look towards ending their performance on a win.
This is it. You know, the reality of the situation is these guys don't get unlimited opportunities to play international competition.